Here's a real good example of the artist really illustrating some very strong winds. It's clear to see here, especially with the clothesline in the background, how you have a very strong gusty wind blowing from, as we're looking at this image, from left to right. And you can see here, of course, the women struggling with what they're holding and the wind clearly pushing them along from left to right here. And even the background, the trees here, definitely bending in the direction that the wind is blowing. It's hard to see off in the distance. This looks like it might be either a mountain or perhaps this is a very dark line of clouds coming in. The dark line of clouds makes sense. This could be a storm, a line, a squall line of thunderstorms forming, and pushing out ahead of that squall line are these very strong, what we call straight line winds that push out ahead of strong thunderstorms. So this is certainly very accurate. A squall line in the distance and pushing out ahead of it some winds that can at times gust in excess of 50 miles per hour. So a very accurate description here of an approaching storm front.
It's such a strong picture of a very gusty wind, and yet wind is invisible, right? And yet the artist is able to do it mostly by the diagonal lines, and also the way the trees with the diagonal. And when you have diagonal lines, it shows turbulence and nervousness, etc. And that's what she shows here. The colors that Mariana uses are the cool colors. There are only a few warm colors, little dabs of red here and there, but mostly they're the greens and the blues and the cool colors, which gives part of the whole atmosphere of a cold, windy day.
There's a lot going on in this particular photo here. We have a couple of different levels of clouds. Here you see the brighter clouds in the lower part here of the screen, but also the upper part of the screen. And then interspersed here are some much darker clouds. This is very typical and very accurate. In this case, we very often see different levels of clouds moving through. But this is a very good lesson in the fact that a bright cloud looks bright because the sun is shining on it. A dark cloud appears dark because it is in shadow. A lot of people think that brighter clouds are sort of innocent and gentle clouds and not stormy ones. Darker clouds are stormy and somehow ominous, and they contain more rain. That's not the case at all. These bright clouds are bright because they are in direct sunlight. These darker clouds are simply in shadow or in shade, so they're not getting direct sunlight. So that's the difference there. You also notice the rainbow off in the distance. The rainbow is going to be in the opposite part of the sky as the sun. So if the rainbow is off in the distance, that means the sun is behind us here as we look off in this direction. So some really great contrast in the cloud brightness here, and a very accurate depiction of that rainbow opposite the sky to the sun.
I like this picture particularly because it shows how insignificant man is against nature. And he shows it in so many different ways. It's a bad day, it's a stormy day, but on the other hand, there's hope because of that beautiful rainbow. And who knows, maybe there's a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. There's also a repetition of shapes. There's repetition of the clouds, and the repetition of the wood, the greenery, the bushes, and the shapes have this repetition, which is very nice and keeps the eye moving that way.
This picture really speaks to us as being cold. There's no question about it. We just get cold looking at this. Clearly you have a pretty good blizzard going on here. And it looks to me, by the way the tail of the horse is pushed here, and also it looks like the way his scarf or whatever it is he has around his neck there is blowing, that the wind is blowing strong from our right to our left. And this is pretty typical of what we might call a ground blizzard. There may not be a lot of snow falling from the sky, but because there are strong winds, that wind is picking up whatever snow is on the ground. That's reducing visibility quite a bit, and that's what we would oftentimes call a ground blizzard. So here the artist is really depicting this desolation here because of the lack of visibility. You can't see very far far off in the distance, typical of a ground blizzard, but also that very strong feeling of the winds blowing from one side of the painting to the other.
You notice Richard Lorenz put his main characters right in the center of the painting, and yet they're not moving anywhere. They're not going anywhere. This is what, don't you call that a whiteout? Mm-hmm. Anyhow, they can't even see where they're going. The horses' hooves are just buried in the snow. I love the way he makes the scarf of the cowboy blowing in the wind, and you could see the blowing of the nostrils from the horse's nostrils. These are all interesting triangles too that the cowboy is wearing, and the greenery on the snow all shows different repetition of shapes and of triangles.
Wow, a lot of motion here and a lot of drama on the high seas. You can really see the building storm clouds off in the distance. Clearly very stormy, strong wind conditions, the strong waves. And what's very typical here, when you get these sort of squally type conditions, especially over the ocean, although we see them over land as well, as you will see occasional bright spots in the clouds. These are what are called stratocumulus clouds. They are low, flat stratus clouds, but they're also kind of lumpy and bumpy like cumulus are. So stratocumulus, and they do allow some occasional sunlight or at least some brighter spots to come in. And that you see in some of the brightness of the sky, but also the brightness showing up in the water as well. This particular boat here seems to be almost under a spotlight, you might think of sunlight coming through some of these built-up storm clouds. So very accurate depiction, a stratocumulus type of cloud deck, very typical of these nasty storms out over the ocean, although we can still see this type of cloud formation over land as well.
This is really an awesome picture. It really shows the terror of the high seas. And yet, these are fishermen, and they have to go out because this is how they earn their livelihood. These men are braving these high seas. It just sends terror through you to feel that these people are going out, and whether they make it or not, we don't know. But we hope that they do. But it's the artist shows all of this with all those wonderful diagonal lines and the white caps of that sea. That is a turbulent sea. That, I would not like to be out on a sea like that.
This is one of those images that gets my eyes sort of watering and scratchy. This is clearly pollution depicted very, very well. This could easily be a perfectly sunny day, and if there was no pollution at all, this might be one of those days with perfectly blue sky. But you can see the smokestacks, the smoke coming out of them, the clouded sky, but yet you do see the hint of the sun that's reflecting off of the water here. This is clearly a very polluted sky, but typical of pollution. You get that very dark brown haze as you look off into the distance, but yet you get a glow into the sky. There is some sunshine up there, and you can see the sun reflected off of the water. A typical day when we may see beautiful blue sky if we could ever get above the haze layer, but the artist has depicted this very gray, polluted condition extremely well in this image.
You know, Claude Monet liked to visit London in the wintertime. And he always stayed at the Savoy Hotel. And from the balcony, he could see this scene. He saw this Waterloo Bridge from his balcony. And we're told that he painted about 37 pictures of this scene, this and another bridge that was nearby. And the reason he did so many of them is that he would do one. He was interested in catching the way the light, the sunshine, looked on the water. And of course it looked different every time during the day, during different times of the day. And so he would start painting this scene, for instance, and he got it, and then the sun would change. It would go behind the cloud, or it would be setting. So he put that painting away and took another canvas and did another painting of that time of the day. He did 37 paintings like that, and one at different appropriate times of the day. But the way he did it was with very short brush strokes, and he didn't belabor it. He did it quickly, and what he saw, not what he thought the water should look like, but what he saw, the colors that he actually saw and appreciated. So you have all different kinds of colors in that water, for instance, and yet the viewer mixes the colors in his own eyes, so that we do our own mixing of the colors, especially when we stand far away from the painting, then we can see it the way he saw it.
This is a beautiful, serene scene, but it is also very accurate as we look at a sunset or a sunrise. The artist has very clearly depicted the reddish look to the sky. And what's really interesting to look here is to see how the sun is gradated in color, from the bright yellow down to the sort of the murky, darker red here. This is what happens with a sunrise or a sunset. Sunlight has to cut through quite a bit of the atmosphere, and so most of the wavelengths of light are scattered out, except for the red and yellows. Those are the longer wavelengths of light, and they are the ones that make it through all the murk and atmosphere when the sun is low on the horizon. And you get that gradation of reddish color where the atmosphere is thickest or densest, and then you get the brighter yellowish colors here as the sun gets a little bit higher in the sky. So even the solar image can have gradation of colors from bottom to top as it shines through the atmosphere. A very excellent depiction of the sunrise or sunset, the sun's image near the Earth's horizon.
This painting is a favorite of the people who visit our museum. And it shows this majestic, solitary lion sitting there and watching the sun setting. So it's the king of the beasts watching the king of the heavens. And as a result, there's a solitude and a silence about it.
Here's a nice tranquil weather scene. We've seen a lot of stormy scenes, but here's a nice tranquil one. Beautiful sun conditions here. And what's very interesting, meteorologically speaking, is the great way that this lone cumulus cloud up here in the sky is depicted. This is classic. We see a very dark bottom to the cumulus cloud because this is a case where the sun is not hitting that part of the cloud. Cumulus clouds on a typical fair weather day, when we get these fair weather cumulus, as we call them, have very distinctive flat but dark bottoms to them, and then brighter tops. And we're not quite able to see the tops of this cloud too much through the haze layer as it appears up there, but we really do see the clear dark part of this bottom of the cumulus cloud. Otherwise, kind of a nice, bright, sunny day, but not a perfectly blue sky. Sort of some haze here off in the distance, and that haze, that water vapor in the air, tends to scatter sunlight in such a way that instead of perfectly blue, we get more of a washout, kind of a whitish sort of sky. But nonetheless, still a delightful day.
For a change, we see man controlling nature. Here we don't see the heavy seas or the dark clouds. It's a lovely day, and these people are out harvesting what they had grown. And we see also the use of perspective with vanishing point, the way the lines sort of converge toward the back.
Finally, here we see a great scene of the sun setting or rising, but it doesn't matter at this point because whenever that sun is low to the horizon, we know from a couple of our earlier images that we can get that reddish color. But here you see the sun near the horizon, but it's really white and sort of washed out. This is because there is so much haze in the air, whether it's pollution or just water vapor or haze that's in the air, that instead of getting color coming back in, all of the rays of light are sort of scattered equally, and we tend to just get a washed out image instead of a very colorful one. But notice up above, these are mid-level clouds. They are up above the haze layer, and they're just starting to catch some of the colors, the reddish colors of the sun near the horizon. So from our eyes, we're looking through so much haze and water vapor that we're just seeing the washed out whitish color of the sun, whereas up above, the clouds above the haze layer are actually catching some of the red that we would normally see with a typical sunrise or sunset.
You know how I know it's a tranquil, peaceful day? There are people standing up in the boat. They couldn't have done that if it were high seas. This is a lovely painting, and it does make you feel comfortable and at ease and at peace. And some of it is because of the beautiful warm colors that the artist uses. He also has a good repetition of shapes. The shapes of the buildings, the high buildings and the tall spire here. There's repetition of all these good shapes and the reflection of the shapes into the water, as you can see here.